All right, so we got to get into what actually happened this week. Memphis able to clinch the AAC regular season title, or at least a share as of right now. They beat UTSA 75-70. A little scarier, Munz, than we thought was actually going to be the case, but able to get it done. Certainly something that Penny Hardaway said he wanted to achieve here in year 7 now of being in the AAC. 25-5 overall, 15-2 in league play. Dane Danger had 19 points, 8 rebounds, continue his great play. PJ Haggerty, 18 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. And we got another double-digit game from Nicholas Jourdain. Got a chance to hear from Penny Hardaway after the game about what they wanted to achieve and what they were actually able to do. Take a listen here.
Obviously, we wanted to, do better than what we did last year. We started off really good, really well, and then we got in the conference and then we faltered. So we started off really well in non-conference this year, but we really wanted to do really well in conference, and we've done that. So our goals were to win regular season conference, to win the conference championship next week, and then to make it to a Final Four. And those were our long-term goals. Our short-term goals at the time were just to get the culture good. And then the basketball was a long term.
So, Munz, we know how difficult this has been for Penny Hardaway since he's kind of come on as head coach to have this particular goal of winning the AAC in the regular season. He's got a tournament championship he picked up with Kendrick Davis back in 23. But for him to accomplish this year, what do you make of what the Tigers have been able to do resume-wise and just conquering this AAC that seems to be a stumbling block for them year after year?
Yeah, well, first of all, Penny deserves all the credit that he's been getting lately and all season long, really. He deserves all that credit. He will deserve it when he wins Coach of the Year next week. When those conference awards are announced, he will be completely deserving of getting that because obviously of what they've done again, they've at least won a share of the conference championship, and they will probably win the thing outright here Friday night. So that's first and foremost. But I have to think that it is even, all that stuff is great, and it's very satisfying, I'm sure, for him personally, professionally, all that stuff. But I can't help but feel like it has to be even sweeter for him, given everything that he's been through his first 6 seasons as Memphis coach. Because let's not, forget, let's not lose sight of the fact that there has been quite a bit of tumultuousness that he's had to weather.
A lot more than a lot of coaches got to deal with, quite honestly, year to year.
Yeah, and let's also not lose sight of the fact that some of it is he's at least partially responsible for. You know what I mean? There's some things that he could have done differently. He's even said it a few times this season that if he could go back and do some things differently, he would. So there's that, but I cannot begin to even put myself in his shoes for how it must feel to have gone through all of that stuff, and now he's here and he is experiencing all of these things that he's been trying to, he's accomplishing all of these things that he's been trying to accomplish for a very long time. Yeah, he's made the NCAA tournament a couple times before. Those were, I'm sure, very, very big moments in his career and his life. He won the NIT championship. That was nice. He won the AAC tournament championship a couple of years ago, beating number 1 Houston, the only coach in program history to beat a number 1 ranked team that was ranked number 1 at the time they beat him. So all very good things, but this here has to be the most satisfying, I would think, stretch of his career by doing what he did in the non-conference, beating the teams that he beat in the non-conference, beating the coaches that he beat in the non-conference, and then coming into conference play when the wheels fell off at that point last year. Not only did they not fall off this year, he basically steamrolled through conference play, and he's going to continue to reap the benefits of that here in the coming weeks. And it's just, it's got to be really, really, really intensely satisfying for him, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think this has been probably the most smooth sailing season that I've seen, at least since I've been kind of covering the Tigers, and we didn't think it was going to be that way at the beginning, because we did have the Tyreek Smith kind of drama and figuring out if he's going to be here or if he's not going to be here, and he's just trying to get more money and all of that kind of stuff. And you're kind of looking at it at the beginning of the season, you're like, oh man, this is about to be another one of those, right? In terms of what happened, especially because of what happened the season before with those Tigers and the 4-game losing streak that they have. And so what they've been able to do this year has really been impressive, fantastic. They had a great non-conference last year as well, but then you come in, you beat the defending champions in UConn, you do what you did in the non-conference, even though you had a bump in the road, right, with the Arkansas State loss. Mississippi State kind of punked you on your home floor. You come back, you insert Dane Danger into that starting lineup. I kind of feel like that's where the foot really hit the gas. Would you agree with that assessment?
100%. I mean, if you remember, the game that Dane was reinserted into the starting lineup was the first UAB game here at FedEx Forum. Yes. I mean, that was the UAB was the preseason pick to win the conference, and that just so happens to be the game where Dane Danger got reinserted into the starting lineup and ignited this sort of stretch drive that Memphis has been on. There was, I mean, you mentioned hiccups. There was one at Temple that has turned out to be pretty, not great. Yeah. And then of course you had the overtime loss at Wichita State that came after after Dane got put back in the starting lineup. But no, for the most part, yeah, for sure, Dane's emergence has really been like the perfect thing at the perfect time for this team.
Okay, so you said it. He's going to deserve to be Coach of the Year. I would argue putting a Dane Danger in the starting lineup is a Coach of the Year kind of move. When you guys spoke to him the other day, he kind of mentioned what it may feel like to be Coach of the Year if that does fall his way, and it looks like it does. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Back in the day, it was Mick Cronin, it was Coach Kelvin Sampson, and then last year, even Amir, rest in peace. For him to do it, I was like, wow, he came in first year, got Coach of the Year, and then, his team won the regular season. So I took that as, took that personally and wanted to achieve that as well as team things, and I'm very excited to even be mentioned, in that same breath. But also, everybody knows I'm a team guy, but there's also a little selfishness in there as well as a coach because I know how hard I work.
Okay, so you hear him kind of talk a little bit about himself, but not talk about himself. But, he looked up to these guys. I think when you think of Coach of the Year, it can be kind of twofold, right? It can be a team that maybe is not dominant but definitely overachieves. And then there's the teams that are just like, we blew everybody out of the water. There really can't be a discussion. I would argue that Penny is kind of maybe in the middle. What would be your assessment of the Coach of the Year honors? And is there an argument for anybody else in the AAC as Coach of the Year this year?
Oh, I think there's definitely an argument. You look at North Texas coach Ross Hodge. They were picked, I think, to finish 6th or 7th or maybe even 8th before the season. Like they were a pretty good team last year. They lost everybody who was like a major contributor for them last season. They lost them all. Jason Edwards went to Vanderbilt, and you see what Vanderbilt's doing this season. Aaron Scott went to St. John's. Obviously, you see what St. John's is doing. So these are the caliber of players that North Texas had last year that they all of a sudden didn't have going into this season. And so like because they lost all these guys, they were not expected to do much this season. And here we are on the last weekend. We're going into the last weekend of the regular season, and North Texas still is not mathematically eliminated from having at least a share of the conference championship, despite starting over and losing all these star type players. I think Ross Hodge deserves a ton of credit for that, and that's the thing I've talked about with this league. A lot's been said about this league that's been pretty derogatory, and a lot of it has been warranted. But like this league, I think that doesn't get a lot of credit for the caliber of coaches that it has. We talked about Ross Hodge, obviously Penny Hardaway. You've got Andy Kennedy over at UAB, Ron Hunter down at Tulane, who's a fantastic coach. John Jacobs at FAU is really is a really good coach. I'm going to be missing some. I know it. You got Adam Fisher at Temple, Paul Mills at Wichita. Like these are guys who a lot of these guys are probably have either been at a power in a power conference before, Andy Kennedy being one, or could eventually be in a power conference as a coach. So, I think there are cases to be made for others, but given what Penny Hardaway has done this season, he's dominated. The second place team right now, Memphis beat them, North Texas. The third place team, UAB, Andy Kennedy. Penny Hardaway in Memphis has beaten them twice. I think Tulane is next in the standings. Memphis beat them on their home floor, the only time they played each other this year. So, I think in terms of how we define, what criteria we put on Coach of the Year, you could argue it a couple of ways. The Ross Hodge example is one way you could argue it, but I think what sort of tilts the scale pretty significantly toward Penny Hardaway is number one, they won the head-to-head matchup with that team in the regular season, and then number two, just the body of work that Penny has put together. Penny and Memphis has put together this season. I mean, it's just, to me, it's a no-brainer that he will win this award, and then of course on top of that, I think it's like maybe it's every year since the league has been in existence that the coach from the regular season champion has won the award. So it's Penny's award this season, and I think he's more than deserving.
100%. And then of course we're talking about him potentially. He's in a finalist for the Naismith Coach of the Year as well, which is a whole different can of worms when you're talking about all the great coaches across the country this year. Let's kind of switch gears just a little bit. They got to certainly take care of business on Friday, make sure they get the outright regular season championship. They go into the NCAA or the AAC tournament rather. You're hoping they just take care of business there. Now we're talking about the NCAA tournament and potentially making noise on that level. As I go and read my Jason Munz article from the Commercial Appeal, looking at what basketball projections look like, Joe Lunardi for ESPN's got them as a 7 seed. I think CBS has them as a 6. Bracketville, who you love, has them as a 6. Is that kind of the ceiling, you think, for where the Tigers are going to end up? Because it seems like they're pretty much a lock at this point. Or is there, maybe room for a 5, maybe room for a 4?
Yeah, big Bracketville guy over here. Love Dave Amman. So shout out to Dave. Bracket guy Dave. Anyway, I think that the most realistic scenario is that Memphis will be a 6. I don't subscribe to the 7 stuff. I think that there is I get the sort of the predictive metrics and the resume-based metrics are very much at odds with one another, but I think that the selection committee is going to lean toward the resume-based stuff, and I think that's why that I'm giving Memphis sort of I'm leaning more toward the 6 than I am the 7 that some others have Memphis at, but. This is not to say that there isn't a sliver of an opening for a 5 if Memphis goes out tomorrow night and wins by 25 and then goes to Fort Worth and just completely rolls over everybody there. and it's not even close. I think there's a chance that Memphis can get to a 5, but I think they'll also need a little bit of help to get there. I think some of the teams that are around them in the pecking order, in the seeding pecking order, as we sit here today, it would yeah, Memphis I feel like would probably need some of those teams to maybe falter a little bit here down the stretch to make it to sort of widen that crack in the door for Memphis. I'm not sure that is going to happen, and so I'm not sure they're going to be able to get to the 5. Not saying it's impossible, but I don't quite, it's tough to predict that. So I do think 6 is probably the most likely scenario.
All right, well, we'll see. They got to get the first step out of the way, and that's winning tomorrow night when they play South Florida. That's 8 o'clock in FedEx Forum. Jason Munz will certainly be in the building, Tigers beat writer for the Commercial Appeal. Jason, really appreciate you being on the show, man. You know your stuff better than anybody in this city, and that's why we had to have you on, my friend.
Well, next time I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you, but so next time I'm gonna make sure that we're side by side, because I appreciate you and all that you do.
Of course.